Normally, we feel pretty confident about our picks, but we're going to feel even more confident by giving you our picks on a Thursday. I'm joined by Mitch Wolf today. We're going to talk BC and Florida State and the upcoming matchup in Tallahassee on Saturday. All of this and our picks of the week on today's Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black, joined today by Mitch Wolf. We're going to be discussing the Florida State game, giving our predictions, and I got a feeling you could probably already guess where this is going to go. But Mitch, how are we doing tonight?
Doing all right. I think now that we've kind of come back to earth with this season, I think I imagine this will be our first loss prediction of the season, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it took a little while, just like it did last season with Dennis Grosel, but I think we're all there. Not feeling too good about this game, but I think a lot of what's going into this is there's a lot to look into in terms of the injuries for both teams. Jordan Travis, the quarterback for Florida State, got injured last week. I think he was in a boot, but has been practicing this week. He looks good, but will he play or not? That's a big question. Jared Verse, we have no idea if their star defensive lineman's going to play. But for Boston College, we talked on yesterday's show. The big news there is, will Ozzie Trapilo play? Because that's a big deal. I mean, the difference between what Trapilo can do versus what Nick Thomas can do is a gap wide enough that you could drive a Humvee through it. Trapilo's not the best left tackle right now, but he's a heck of an increase. Now, I mean, an upgrade over Thomas. Mitch, what are some things that you're looking at so far this week?
So the Trapilo thing is obviously a big one. I would say even a 75% Ozzie Trapilo is probably better than 100% Nick Thomas at this point, especially if Jared Verse is going to play, because again, like I've said about the Clemson game, like this team has a really good defensive line. They've got two NFL quality defensive tackles in Robert Cooper and Fabian Lovett. I think Lovett got hurt last week as well, but I think he's going to be fine. And Cooper is a massive nose tackle. So, having him and Kendall and whoever the guards are, they're going to have a tough task trying to get him out of the A gap. But I think things have finally kind of come together for Mike Norvell at Florida State. Their offensive line isn't, they're playing better. They're kind of really running his scheme now. Jordan Travis seems to have taken a big step forward. I think he was 11 for 11 with like 148 yards and 2 touchdowns before he got hurt last week against Louisville. So, even if he's, not 100% as a runner, now he can really hurt you in the passing game. So that's not great for BC. And I mean, on the BC side of things, it's kind of the same old story. Like, can the offensive line hold up? Will the offensive line be able to move the ball at least a little bit to give the defense rest? Because, as we've said about Florida State, there's just always going to be this inherent speed and athleticism mismatch, which Florida State will always have the advantage in. And, on defense, if the defense is tired and Florida State's trotting out dudes that are, better athletes and faster than them. And also now they have this, freaking transformer named Johnny Wilson, or I think his name
6'7".
He's like 6'7", 245. And, I imagine they'll probably try to put Elijah Jones on him, but that'll be a very interesting matchup to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most negative feeling I've had towards a game in a while, because as I said on yesterday's show, BC last year, you trade out Jermaine Johnson for Jared Verse, right? Mm-hmm. Jared, the Noles have done a nice job in the transfer portal of grabbing some really good defensive linemen. But last year, BC had a good offensive line. I know a lot of BC fans don't want to say it, but if you look at Pro Football Focus, they had a top 35 offensive line last year, given some of the issues that they had. And they still, Djokovic was running for his life for that.
Yeah, in that game, you saw why Jermaine Johns was a first-round pick, and Tyler Vrabel and Ben Petrullo went undrafted.
Exactly. So this year, I mean, I was saying, I texted Mitch, like, the media keeps asking Jeff Hafley about Nick Thomas, and it's like, yeah, he's a great story, but the poor kid is getting killed out there. And Hafley's trying to be as positive as he can about him. He's got a scholarship. He's not a walk-on anymore. Great story and all, but he is, and I mean, he's a detriment to that offense right now. He's a major, major issue because he's not anywhere near where he needs to be. And I don't blame him. They're just throwing him out there. And it's, I mean, if BC even doesn't want to get blown off the field, they got to get Ozzy Trapillo out there this week. A 75% Ozzy Trapillo is going to be an upgrade.
Yeah, and I mean, even regardless of who is there, they're going to need to send help to whoever the left tackle is. Like, they'll need to keep it, probably not Takis, but keep a tight end or back into block, have them chip whatever edge rushers over there. They're going to. I think Hafley talked about being more creative with the offensive line. It's kind of a weird thing. It's kind of an anachronistic statement that you need to be more creative to simplify things for the offensive line. And unfortunately, I think they're going to need to be a little more complicated this week because I imagine Florida State is going to, on one hand, they'd have the athletes to just beat BC one-on-one, but I think they're going to want to try to up the ante and come out with some pretty exotic blitz looks, which has given BC's better offensive lines trouble in the past.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said too. Like it's not something you can put your finger on. But the feeling that Florida State is back and the fact that they haven't played in Tallahassee in a month and a night game, you got to imagine this fan base has been waiting for a reason to be really excited. You're going to have that level of excitement that you took a couple of weeks ago when BC really struggled with that. But again, in Florida State with a better team on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Florida State is 3-0. I think, you could make the argument that, if one or two plays go different ways, they could be 1-2 with their only win coming against an FCS team. But you could also say, if Jordan Travis is healthy for the whole Louisville game, maybe they blow them out. So, but, I don't, there's some people are saying, kind of like that Florida State should be ranked based on who they beat. Not really sure how much I agree with that. But I think that, we've seen Florida State have a lot of issues in the past few years with Mike Norvell, but now, they seem to be doing a lot more of those little things, right, that help you win those one-score games as opposed to losing them. So, I'm not sure BC is really going to be able to keep this close, but, maybe if they can, maybe Florida State kind of reverts back to their old version of themselves and they make some key mistakes that will allow BC to get back into the game.
And I believe BC's won one game against Florida State since 2008, and that was the red bandana game in 2017 or 18.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yes, it was 2017.
They won 35-3 in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that was the game. That was a fun game to watch if you were there live. I was there with family and friends, and BC. That was Anthony Brown. He had a couple of big passes. I think it was to Kobe White.
There was one that Jeff Smith threw. I think Jeff Smith had a big touchdown pass on a reverse.
Yep. So BC does not have a good track record against the Seminoles team. And in a moment, Mitch and I are going to talk a little bit about what BC needs to do to win this game. Like, if they're going to actually come out and try and have a chance, what are some of the things we could see the Eagles do to kind of get out there and pull off an upset win? But before we do that, I want to tell you about getting older has changed your body, maybe getting a little bit of a dad bod. Feeling a little less like yourself, you don't have time to work out, but you're wanting the energy and body you once had. You discovered Nugenix and you feel it's working out like you used to. I love Nugenix because it makes me feel like I am getting myself in great shape. And it's not your fault if you're not. As men age, our bodies naturally loses free testosterone, the man hormone. It happens to every man and can make it more difficult to stay in shape and less energetic. So check this out. When you check out Nugenix, you're going to get a special offer. You're going to get a complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T when you text college to 231-231. Text now and get a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, the most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get into shape fast. Absolutely free. Guys, this is a great deal, and it's absolutely free. So text college to 231-231. Again, text college to 231-231 to get some of that Nugenix. It's going to make you feel great, feel that testosterone that maybe you're feeling you're missing. All right. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here, and we are going on our trek to 600 followers here on our YouTube page. So if you have not done so already, if you're watching this at home on the YouTube page, what you need to do find that little subscribe button over there in the corner. Hit subscribe and follow us. We're trying to get to 600 followers by November 7th. That's the Dartmouth BC basketball game. And we're getting there. We're at 510 right now, and I'd love to get to 530 by the end of this week. So thank you all who have hit that subscribe button. And for those who haven't, please do so. All right, Mitch, this is the time to talk about what BC has to do in this game to win. And it's hard to envision a path to winning this game, but I bet you have some ideas, things BC could do that might get them a chance against a very up and up Florida State team.
So, going beyond praying or hiring hitmen, I would say that I'll harken back to the article that I wrote this week about BC's opening game scripts, which was one of my favorite pieces to write and research.
Very good. You guys got to check that out.
Yeah, please go out, check it out. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. But anyways, the conclusion that I came to at the end of that article was that essentially BC just needs to get the ball into Zay Flowers' hands earlier and more often, because for some reason, and I think it's probably because the defenses are keying in on him early, but they need to find ways to, whether it be screens, jet sweeps, the rocket passes where they have that little tap volleyball pass, or even like just doing normal throws to him, like just get him the ball, because I respect that they're trying to kind of diversify the offense and get Dracovic in a rhythm by throwing to other receivers, but Flowers is just such an explosive weapon, and he's really one of the few people on the field for BC that is probably on the same athletic playing field as a lot of the Florida State defenders. And he had an incredible play last year where I think it was against Florida State, where he caught a pass over the middle and juked out, I think, about maybe 10 of the 11 defenders that was on the field for FSU, and had a big gain to get BC into the red zone and kind of spark their comeback in that game that ultimately fell short. But again, I respect what they're trying to do by, getting the ball to Takis, trying to get the run game going. But I think, you want to see them say like, okay, like we're going to get the ball to Flowers, and we're essentially going to do that until they stop you, or until you stop it. And, eventually they probably will stop it. Sometimes those rocket passes get blown up or whatever happens. But I think that if you, get the ball to him a few times and you get a first down, even if it's like a play that is, looks dead and Flowers just makes that play, that gives the whole offense confidence. It's like, all right, like our best guy is going, like he's doing stuff for us, which is great. So I think that's the first thing that they need to do that they maybe haven't been doing as much of in the first few games.
I want to jump in because I posed this question on Twitter, and I have some great funny answers to end this segment, but I'll get to those in a second. But it brings up something else that you brought up. And I asked people, what do you think BC has to do to win this game? And Tony Feuds said, run the rock. FSU is 85th in rushing yards defense. BC's 129th in rushing yard offense. I saw that. I saw rushing a couple times. But I think, Mitch, you brought up a great point in your article that BC needs to be more on the line of passing to set up the run instead of running to set up the pass.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people, especially older people, don't want to hear that as much. The big established the run crowd. That's like the parents in the Progressive commercials. But at this point, BC needs to be spreading out the defense so they can get lighter boxes for the run game. So essentially, if you, come out with 11 personnel, you put a trips to one side, put Zay Flowers to the other side, and then, you essentially don't have the tight end attached. So you've got four guys kind of out in the slot and out wide. So the defense has to respond to that by, lightening the box. So they only have maybe 4 or 5. Well, only have like maybe five, maybe 6 defenders in the box. And that makes BC's job a lot easier. Like if they are like loading up with condensed formations and, trying to essentially win with physicality, I just don't think that's going to happen because, again, like Florida State has 2 massive defensive tackles who are very good players. Their defensive ends are good. They've got linebackers that are really fast and can make plays. So I think you want to spread the defense out, create some gaps before the snap, and then, then I think that'll make life easier. I also think, we mentioned this last week a little bit. I think that given how the season started, I don't think it's gone the way they wanted, but I think at this point you have to get Phil Dracovic involved in the run game a little more, and hopefully he doesn't get hurt, but work in, maybe a few more designed runs with read options or RPOs or what have you. But, that'll help with getting opportunities for Garwo and the other backs as well, because if the defensive end who's crashing has to pause to consider Phil as a run threat, that gives Garwo an extra step that can lead to an extra few yards. So
I think you mentioned it too. And I don't know if you mentioned it specifically in terms of the trends over the games, but we saw the RPO and Dracovic running against Rutgers, and then it kind of just went away. I don't think I've seen much of that since then. Have you?
I haven't gone back and watched the main game in depth. I've been watching parts of the Virginia Tech game for my next article. Definitely not using it as much. And I think part of the issue is that they were just not being able to run the ball at all.
Right.
And then I don't think they ran it very much against Maine. I think they went with the kind of more traditional passing. So we'll have to see if they kind of deploy that again against Florida State. Because like I said about the main game, is that at one point they kind of were just like, all right, we're not going to put new plays on film. So we're not going to break out some fancy new RPO just to burn it against Maine and put it on tape when we start the meat of our ACC schedule next week.
I have to say, as we were joking about people saying run to set up the pass, I have at least two here. If BC can't run the ball, Florida State will win this game by 3 scores or more. Cannot allow their defense to pin their ears back and come after Jerk. We will all see how that went last year with a much better line in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a fair point. The problem is the team just can't run the ball right now. And I mean, like I said, Florida State has a really good defensive line. So,
it's not going to magically just show up.
Yeah, the logic is sound in a vacuum, but the problem is the opponent is not, favorable towards that matchup. I know that the stats, I would have to look into those stats and how they bear out in terms of, when are those rushing yards being had. Who did Florida? Oh yeah, Louisville. So if you're looking at those rushing yards, 85th in the country in terms of yards per game, the thing that I really look at with that is like how much of those come on like designed runs, So like if they're playing Louisville and Malik Cunningham, scrambles out and, makes a 20-yard run, I'm not necessarily, going to ding the run defense because, they weren't playing the run on that play. That was just QB scramble, and Malik Cunningham's a great rushing threat. So, how many of these yards came on those kind of plays? How many of those rushing yards were, in garbage time in their first game against Duquesne? So, again, like I'm sure like they've had some issues stopping the run, playing LSU is a good team as well. But I just don't really see a world where I in normal times, with the better offensive line, I would agree. Like this is a game where you'd want to slow the pace of the game down by running the ball and keeping the ball out of Florida State's offense's hands. But unfortunately, like BC's not going to be able to do that. So, they would, maybe they throw on first down, get 3 yards, run on second down, maybe gain a yard, and then, incomplete pass on third. And then, it's third down already. So I think they're gonna have to, get some pass plays working early. Maybe if you're gonna run, do it a little more creatively, like throw in some of those sweeps, end arounds. I think they're better off if they are gonna run. I think they're better off just running right at Florida State instead of trying to get to the edge, because again, Florida State's athletes can be able to cover the field sideline to sideline without any problem. So if you run directly at them, like run downhill, you kind of negate the advantage of that speed. It was something that there was a game like many years ago. It was between Oregon State and USC, and it was the year that USC beat Penn State in the Rose Bowl with Mark Sanchez. And I think they were like number 2 in the country, and Oregon State beat them because first they had the Rogers brothers, Jaquiz and James, and they kept putting one in like a fly sweep motion like BC does a lot with Zay Flowers, but then they would essentially just run a halfback dive off of it. And that USC defense was incredible sideline to sideline, but Oregon State was able to negate that advantage by just running right at them, even though they didn't have, a classic big running back. They just got a guy who just ran right up the middle, and USC couldn't react fast enough.
And so to continue on the running first mind frame, John Kane, who's a big fan of the show, said first thing, both sides of the ball. That gives me the old yank at my collars with the that's probably not going to happen.
I mean, that would be sick if they could in the trenches. But that was the problem with Rutgers, and I would say against Virginia Tech as well. Is like this offensive, like if that happens, that's great. Like, but I just don't really see a realistic or
you got to figure out ways around that. Because
like and if they do, and then that's magical, and we can talk about it later. But I just don't see that as being a realistic.
And then the complete opposite of what you believe, which is run the ball effectively to set up play action shots to Zay downfield.
Yeah, I mean, The other
if you're gonna run to set up Zay's never gonna see the ball.
Yeah, exactly. The other funny thing about play action, which a lot of people don't really know, is that you don't necessarily have to be as good at running the ball in and of itself to like essentially as you gain more and more yards rushing, it doesn't follow that you're gonna, be better at play action passing. Like there isn't a direct relationship. Essentially, like as long as there is a, average threat to run, like if the defense just believes you're going to run and then you have that second of pause where the linebackers freeze, that's really all you need. You don't need to be, the Titans with Derrick Henry or some other team that runs the ball really well. You don't have to be Wisconsin, running the ball with Braylon Allen. Like as long as they just believe you're going to run the ball and do it effectively, for a 3 or 4 yard gain consistently, then it works. Problem is BC isn't getting 3 to 4 yards consistently on the ground.
I'm literally looking through all our comments, and it's start quick, turnovers, win the turnover battles, establish the run. BC needs to be able to execute the ground game. BC fans have got it locked in that's what they need to do. It's an interesting thought. So before we get into end this off, I'm just going to go through some of the funny ones because there's some great responses here about what BC needs to do to win this game. And we all need a good laugh, especially if this is going to be a rough weekend. FWF says, or if we aren't getting particularly greedy about getting 3 things, why don't they just block? Chris Davis says each member of the offensive line goes on a tour of Bruce Banner's lab and accidentally gets exposed to doses of gamma radiation.
I like that one.
There was a great one. Okay. I'm going to apologize for the language. It's not bad, but I'm going to say it. Ground Control 22. Kick a field goal on their opening drive and then pray for lightning delay or game cancellation. BC sucks, and as a once diehard fan, I don't even bother watching or caring any longer. That's what irrelevance is.
Alrighty.
So, yeah, we had some great responses to that. Then Thomas Childs gets to what we've been talking about for 3 weeks now. He wrote one word, block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if that if they can do that consistently, that would be good. But I don't think we've seen it to the level that they need it to beat Florida State. So
we have a picture of Ozzy Trillo up. You guys can all pray that he returns and is ready for this game. And we'll talk more about that later. But Mitch, let's give some predictions here. What are you predicting for Saturday's game?
I'm hoping, and I think that this game will be more competitive throughout than perhaps the Virginia Tech game was, where BC just made some mistakes and Tech got out to an early lead and it was just kind of a slog from there. I think this will be closer, but I do think that Florida State will win decently comfortably. I'm going to say Florida State wins 34-17.
34-7. Okay. And also Andy Baxter just tweeted, Hafley said that Trapillo participated in full contact team reps Wednesday, although he was on a limited pitch count. He said, I think the key with him will be how he feels tomorrow and if we ramp up his reps again tomorrow. Again, who the hell knows? If he's going to play
that is a good, as much as you can parse coach speak, and obviously Hafley is very cagey with his responses, I think that's a pretty strong indicator that, Trapillo is leaning towards playing.
Yeah, because you got to also imagine, unless he's really hurt, Trapillo is going to say, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but honestly, I think that's what he was doing at the end of the Rutgers game, because he was. I would argue that he was the one who was most responsible for those final 2 sacks on BC's final drive, and he was playing fine for the vast majority of the game. And then he just started, on that drive, he was just terrible for kind of out of the blue. So I have to imagine it was because of him getting hurt late in the game.
So I'm gonna go. It's a spread of 16.5. I'm going to go with a 21-point Florida State win. I'm going to go with like 35-14 or something like that. And I think we'll be a sad panda on Saturday.
Sad day. It's a sad day. I have 17.5, which is interesting on BetOnline.
Oh, yeah. I haven't looked at the odds recently.
Yeah, now it's up to 17.5. So
okay, all right.
Maybe they're assuming that Trapillo isn't playing.
All right. And those guys know. But anyways, in our final segment, we'll talk more about gambling as we're going to give our odds for the weekend, look at some of the big games that that we are feeling comfortable about. And if you're going to go make those head over to betonline.net. It's your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. I'm telling you, every game. You can find anything on BetOnline. With the NFL, you can find live bets, second half heads. You can do player prop bets. You name it, you can find it on the website. It's a lot of it's comprehensive. You can find everything there. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for everyone there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including baseball, boxing, and golf. So head on over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. AJ Black here. I am joined as always by not as always, but this is our Friday episode early on Thursday with Mitch Wolf. We usually once a week about some of our picks. We go outside of Chestnut Hill and we look at some of the other games. And Mitch, I had a tougher week this week. My pick of South to keep it close against Georgia was I'm gonna take a mulligan on that one. But what are your thoughts about this week? What is your first pick?
So, I mean, I might this might be the time where I actually don't go back to the well, because Iowa is playing Rutgers in what is being deemed punter struck. And the over under, when I last saw it, it was 34.5. It is now down to 33.5. And I might just take it for funsies because that's just so ridiculous. And just I can't find a player prop yet for the total combined number of punts in the game. But whatever that number is, I would absolutely, bet everything I have on the over, because I mean, those two teams just can't move the ball. And I don't really think they even want to move the ball. So that's just going to be defensive slugfest for the ages.
All right. And so I am also, I was thinking of an over under, but I was thinking Baylor, Iowa State, but I'm going to stay away from that. Instead, I'm going to go with Clemson, Wake Forest. Clemson is a 7-point dog in this game. It's a big game in Wake Forest.
You said Clemson's a dog?
I mean, sorry, Wake Forest is the dog.
There we go.
Sorry, got that one all messed up. But I'm thinking, Wake Forest has not beaten Clemson since I think 2008. I think was the last time they beat them, and I get this feeling that Wake Forest's offense is not going to be able to click against Clemson's defense. And DJU he's playing better. I got to give him credit when credit's due. I think Clemson's going to win this pie by about 10, so I'll take Clemson.
I would probably agree with that. I think they probably do cover that spread. I don't really even know about DJ still, because I mean he's since playing Georgia Tech where he was okay, he's played Furman and Louisiana Tech, so I'm not gonna give him his flowers just yet. And it's not like Wake Forest has a great defense either. So yeah, but I do agree that I think Clemson does cover that spread. Looking at the rest of the week, I honestly don't love this slate. You've got some like weird bad games. Teams are some teams are starting conference play, others are still rocking and rolling with their random other games. Trying to see what else we got here. I thought I saw one that I liked. I mean, you've got the classic Navy versus East Carolina, so you've got the Navy versus the Pirates. That's fun. You want some little naval action there. Let me see. Yeah, it is a weird week. You got UConn. NC State is favored by 39 against UConn at home, which is pretty rough. Alabama favored by 40.5 against Vanderbilt. I would take Bama there. But
all right, I'll give you my second while you're still looking.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna go stay in the SEC. I'm gonna go the SEC with this one, and Arkansas and Texas A&M. Texas A, it's a neutral site game. It's at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. It's a 1.5 point spread. I know Arkansas's biggest weakness is their passing defense, which is wretched, but Texas A&M can't move the ball in offense. It's going to be that big of a factor. I think KJ Jefferson's a big enough quarterback to do some things against Texas A&M. I know Texas A&M had that big win against Miami, but is the U really back yet? We don't know. I think Arkansas is going to get a nice 7-point win here.
This is one where I would take the under as well at
Yep.
49. Like you said, Texas A&M has really struggled to move the ball. Arkansas's offense has been kind of up and down depending on the opponent. Texas A&M does have a good defense, so I think this is going to be pretty low scoring. So I would take the under here. Another game I'll pick is I mentioned an earlier matchup, and this is a replay of it, USC at Oregon State. USC is favored by 5.5 on the road. This is a night game in Corvallis, that's where place where funky stuff just always happens. But USC's defense is still coming together. Alex Grinch runs a bit of a weird operation, and Oregon State has a really fun offense. It's a lot of they're kind of running like what Boise State ran in a few years ago when they were still pretty good. But ultimately, I don't think Oregon State can be able to keep up with USC's offense, which is firing on all cylinders right now. So I think USC wins this by at least, probably by like 2 touchdowns, I would say. So they cover that 5.5, no problem.
And so my final pick is going back to the ACC, and it's a battle of two schools relatively close to each other. I don't know. I'm not on Google Maps. I don't live near there, but I think they are. It's Virginia Tech and West Virginia. The Hokies are only a 2.5 point favorite at home against what I think is an absolutely wretched Mountaineers team. I think in terms of for directions, I mean, we saw Brent Pry. He looked like he had things going right. I think, in terms of teams that are falling apart with coaches on the hot seat, I look at West Virginia right now. JT does not look like this is like his third or fourth team. He does not look like he is ready to be an NFL quarterback or a college quarterback. He's just error prone. And I think at home at Virginia Tech, I think the Hokies will win by a touchdown.
Yeah, you really love these 1.5 point spreads, which I try to stay away from. Like, if you're going to do it, just bet the money line, and Virginia Tech's a plus 112. So I would just do that. I will also stick in the ACC for both teams. This is a Friday night game between Virginia and Syracuse. Syracuse is a 9-point favorite at home, and this might be another fun over. I think this game is going to have a lot of points. Syracuse defense is solid, but Virginia has a really explosive offense with Brandon Armstrong still there, and they've got a great core of receivers. So I would say the over here, and I think I would still take Syracuse to cover though, because they're actually playing pretty well on all sides of the ball right now. And Virginia, even though their offense is good, their offensive line is not great, and their defense is struggling. So I think Syracuse wins this one comfortably, and I think there's going to be a lot of points scored.
All right. Those are our picks. Do you agree with us? Disagree with us? Leave it in the comment section. And on tomorrow's show, I'm doing a crossover episode with Locked On Knowles with Drizzy Drake. I'm going to eat some humble pie from last year when I said BC was going to easily beat the Seminoles. And I was absolutely wrong. So I'm sure he'll let me hear about that. But check it out. It'll be up on our YouTube page. It'll be a conversation between the two of us about what BC offers, what Florida State has to do to win. It's going to be an interesting episode. We haven't done a crossover because we haven't had a locked on show for a BC opponent, but we'll be doing these a lot more. So you'll hear me and Drizzy Drake. Make sure to check that out as well. Mitch, where can people find you?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. Like I said, we just published my article about BC's opening game scripts, which I really encourage you to go read. And I'll also be having an article coming out in the next few days but from the defensive, not on the same topic, but kind of a similar style of breaking down something from the defense's point of view. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
And I'm telling you, folks, go to Eagle Insider right now and check out Mitch's work. If you're interested in like the analytics and the game plans and all that good stuff, Mitch does we're the only site I feel that does this stuff for Boston College. So go to Eagle Insider, check all that out. And even for games that are terrible to watch, Mitch makes it interesting. I'm telling you. So go to Eagle Insider, check out his work. It's well worth it. This is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. Again, I'll be back tomorrow. If you have not done so already, please hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. We are trying to get to 600 subscribers by November 2nd and closer every day because you guys are the best. Hit our comment sections with any thoughts you have about this show, and we will be back again. I will be on, and Mitch, are you on for Saturday night with me?
I believe I will be able to, yes.
If not, you'll hear me. So either one or both of us will be on Saturday night to talk the Florida State game, and we'll have our full thoughts and reactions. For Mitch Wolf, this is AJ Black. We'll see y'all again soon. Cheers.